All right, NDP leader Jagmeet Singh is now saying he's not looking to form a coalition government with the Liberals. This comes after he said he was open to working with Justin Trudeau to stop the Conservatives. Trudeau, for his part, refused to comment on the topic at all. Polls are suggesting we're in for some sort of minority government. So what do you think? Would you support a minority or a coalition government? What do we make of this?
Ooh. Well, Monique on Facebook, Monique says, I've been saying this all along. I wish multiple political parties cooperated and worked together. Monique, that is the dream. Everyone's an adult. You really hope that they work together. And with a minority government, yeah, they're going to be making deals and have to put aside their sort of personalities and maybe some of their partisan views to work together. And you really do hope that happens. And it looks like
in a coalition situation?
In a minority situation.
In a minority situation.
And I think that it looks like that's the way it's going to be. There's going to be a minority government. I just hope whatever minority government gets elected works with the Green Party. Because I think even Elizabeth May put that message out in the last English debate, just said sort of like a plea, listen, she almost recognizing they're not going to be a majority government, the Greens, but let's just work with us, work with the Green Party. And I support that. I really hope that everyone has that foresight, because I do think climate change right now is so critical to this country. Yeah, absolutely.
You know, this is the thing. In parts of the world, a coalition situation, which is when a minority government is elected, the other two parties, or maybe more, get together and say, well, let's work together, because the math works out that we could potentially have actually more seats in Parliament than a minority government earns, but gets voted in for.
And then they have to ask permission, right?
This gets into a tricky situation. Canada's never seen this. We almost got there, 2008 and 2009.
Yeah, remember
the Liberals and the NDP were like, let's chat. Let's ouster a minority Harper Conservative government. They went to go talk to the Governor General. Governor General was like, nope, we're going to prorogue Parliament. And then it plunged us into another election, which is actually an argument to consider a coalition.
How's that?
Because if you look at other parts of the world where coalition governments are the norm, for example, Germany, very stable, big government representing a lot of players at the table. If you look and study them around the world, they are very stable. What happens in a minority government situation is that there is always a threat that the other parties are going to say, no confidence vote. And always, I'm so sick and tired of going to the polls, it feels like every 5 minutes. I'm sick of it. And what I want is stability. I want someone who's voted in with a mandate to have stability.
What makes you think that will be stable? Just imagine that for a scenario. Imagine just for a scenario that Scheer wins, okay? Let's just say he wins by a minority, and then you have a coalition made between Justin Trudeau and Jagmeet Singh, the NDPs and the Liberals get together. And then they go and let's say it's a successful ousting. Imagine what people who voted for Scheer would feel like.
It would feel like a coup.
It would feel like a coup. It would feel like, I don't think that creates any kind of good will amongst the people. I feel like that would be a huge uprising and a huge, rightly so. If you can imagine in any scenario to try to
legal. Don't call it a coup.
Okay, but we've never had
the Governor General would have to say, okay.
We don't know what that would happen to the people and the voters, the voting public. I think that would actually be the worst case scenario. And I know a lot of people say with a minority government, nothing ever gets done. And to be honest, I thought, oh, that feels like the truth. But in actuality, it's not necessarily that true. It was a minority parliament, after all, that saw Canada through the worst of the last global recession. That was a minority situation. We made it through, guys, quite well. We did it. But this is another great example that I uncovered of minority government effectiveness. In the 1960s, Liberal Prime Minister Mike Pearson, he had 2 terms. In both situations, I understand he had a minority government. And then through that, supported by the NDPs, his Liberals actually put in place all these kind of progressive initiatives. So they did universal coverage of hospitalization and Medicare, the Canada and Quebec pension plans, Canada's student loans program. There's a whole bunch of examples of that. So they all managed to work together, and they didn't even like each other. So him and his opposition leader, John Diefenbaker, they were openly kind of cantankerous. They were like, thought they were both ineffective loser leaders, basically, and yet looking back, this is considered to be like the golden age of modern nation building. I think this might be exactly in these divisive times what we need right now as a minority situation.
You know what? I agree with the minority situation. I was doing a little research, and there's a professor at UBC, his name is Maxwell Cameron, and he says that in what he has learned in his research, that the most stable and productive governments are minority governments. And he said, then he delves into the whole majority aspect, and he says, because you want to stay away from what he calls the false majority. You know, a lot of people say it's more stable if you have a majority government. He says no. He says because you're dealing with what is a false majority. It is deemed by who gets past the post first. Whoever wins the, most seats has the majority,
which
right?
needs some reform, which should have been reformed.
Right? It didn't get reformed. And he said, and so the assumption there is that that majority government is going to take into consideration all Canadians, that the majority of Canadians will be taken care of. And he says no, because that majority government will then be beholden to who got them there. And who didn't vote for them will often get ignored. And he calls that a false majority. So he says a minority government then makes a kind of table for more diverse views that more represent the country more so than the so-called majority.
But here's the thing, the bottom line is this. This is where, a reminder of Canadian Politics 101, this is where our system is fundamentally different than the Americans. We do not vote for the Prime Minister.
No, we don't.
When you are going, if you were advance voting, you saw that. The name is not there unless you are living in Trudeau's riding or you're living in Scheer's riding or Jagmeet's riding. You are not voting for the Prime Minister of this country. You are voting for your local representative. And so if the majority of Canadians, if there's a coalition situation and your party gets voted in and you voted for your local person, and then this group over here, you vote for your local person, democracy dictates that that majority, which could form a coalition, technically speaking, is actually representing the majority of Canadians. So let's just remind ourselves, you are not voting for the Prime Minister. You are voting for your local representative. That is how our politics